does limited social interaction due to school closures and lockdown affect an adolescent's social identity, and how important is that developmentally?
Yeah, this question has been a really important point of consideration this year, I think from different angles. So one is, we do recognize that for teenagers, that social connection and having peers and having people that, you know, they're able to feel close to and identify with is really vital for their development. I think we know that for online connection or like having virtual connections with peers, that certainly can be a helpful, I wouldn't say replacement, but like helpful part of coping with the isolation. But yeah, I mean, we know that a lot of teenagers have been reporting issues with feeling more lonely and feeling more depressed and anxious this year, in large part because of the social isolation. And then some teenagers who feel like they can't really cope with that, maybe engaging in behaviors like running away or doing other higher risk things that can really cause problems for them and for their families. So yeah, I think a lot of the focus has been how can we support teenagers, whether it's through the school structure or other kind of community family opportunities. How can we support teenagers to have more social connection? And hopefully, as things improve, that's going to be a really important part of them getting back to school.
Yeah, so one of the biggest concerns that we had when the pandemic first hit was that kids weren't going to be able to play recess, and they weren't going to be getting outdoors and interacting and engaging with their peers. And so we continued to try to come up with ideas to replace play and recess, which is really hard to do in a virtual setting. I think even just the social interactions that our older students have during passing periods, during lunch, during our extracurricular activities, all of that has come to a halt. And that's a major concern because our social development is what helps us have those skills to interact with our community, right? And that's what we learn while going to school. And so with that taken away, we're really trying to think of different ways that we could add in different ways for kids to socialize and for students to socialize, but it's not the same. And so we have to acknowledge that it's not the same, and that students are missing out on so much. I think while, you know, we at the district, we've continued to come up with replacements and other options for our community, at the end of the day, it's still not the same. And so what is the impact of our students, and how long will we see this kind of ripple effect? And so even thinking about, you know, if you were a junior last year and this year you're a senior and then you're going to college when the pandemic is over, you missed out on those 2 years that helped to prepare you to go to college or go into the workforce. And so, you know, what can we do better as a school district and as educators and as a community to make sure that we are doing the best to prepare you to go out into your adult life? Because yeah, there's just so much that is learned through social interaction that you can't learn from a book. You don't learn it in a, you know, in an academic way. It is from just being a part of a community.
I think this also comes back to what your needs are as a person. And so people who are more dependent on that, interactions with other people, getting that frequent feedback from other people, it's more difficult for them to be socially isolated, and more difficult for them to do Zoom interactions as opposed to face-to-face interactions. And so it's really important to somehow build that into your day if you do need that. And that can be through talking on the phone with your friends, Zooming with your friends, going out for a walk with your friends and keeping a 6-foot distance with a mask on. Those are all things that really can work. For people who are more introverted and less dependent on that, their identity and feelings about themselves is likely to be less affected by the loss of social interaction. In terms of the more extroverted person, we need to think about ways of getting that recognition from other people, which is such an important part of their social identity.
So I would think probably a majority of the kiddos are struggling with it, but there is kiddos that I work with every day that actually are excelling with online learning, and because of the fact that they had, difficult times with social interactions and their peers, and they felt like they couldn't relate. They were being bullied at school, so now that's kind of been mitigated because they're at home and they feel safe and secure in their home environment. So those kiddos are actually doing really well, and they don't want to return. And that's where then the anxiety comes back to, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, like, to me, and how am I going to be seen when I go back to school? And it goes back to support, having the family support and peer support, and it even can extend to that through the community support, neighbors, teachers being a support system, social workers like myself being a support system. So I think that's really huge for kids. They need that support system, and they need to be heard, and their feelings need to be validated.